Hi, everyone. This is Robin Paoli with the Texas Counts campaign. We're going to pause for just a moment and let folks join. I'm going to go ahead and bring my screen online, and we'll wait just a minute to make sure all the participants have been able to join. Okay, welcome to Texas Counts. We are refiguring our ground game. And so as we know, everybody in planning census outreach had some sort of in-person outreach planned. Today what we're going to talk about is how all of us are reconfiguring those plans, both what, and we're going to use the terminology of push and pull today. With pull being all the times that we were going to have folks, come join us at something, and then push for all the times that we were going to go out and be with them. I'm going to pause for just a moment. We've got some folks joining that we're going to promote as panelists. And so hold on just a moment. And so my colleague Erin is rejoining as a panelist, and also our fearless leader, Katie Martin. And so we want to bring both of them on as panelists right now. There are several other people we're going to bring on as panelists when we ask you to share out information about what you're doing today. And so let me just start off with three people. At the beginning, we know that you're going to be hearing from Frances with Houston in Action, with DaVina from East Texas, and then from Lila about the state demographer's office. And let me ask Katie and Erin, are you with us now?
Hi, Robin. I'm here, but it doesn't look like I've made the switch to panelist yet. So let me come sign back in, okay?
Okay. And then Katie Martin, you are, whenever you're available to talk, you should have been promoted to a panelist as well. So while Katie and Erin are coming on as panelists, we're going to launch a poll. I want to ask everybody if you would respond to the poll to these questions. First one is, which in-person events did you have planned?
Okay, Robin, I am back.
Wonderful. And Katie, I know that you're with us as well. Thank you for that. Frances, welcome. We're going to promote you to a panelist because we're going to start with Frances as one of our panelists in just a minute. Does everybody see the poll?
I don't. But maybe Any-
I don't see a poll either, Robin.
Um,
I'm gonna try going back in a different way. Give me one second.
okay. I mean, if I share my desktop, I know everybody's going to be able to see the poll because it's up on my screen. Are others, do people mind jumping into the chat and telling me, can you see this poll?
I do not.
Let me close it, Erin, and
Looks
ask
like
you to
Frances
relaunch it
can
for us.
see the poll.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience while we get the poll up. We want to get started with that one. That's important to get everybody's feedback real quickly. Okay, thank you for everybody who's responding. Erin, are you going to relaunch the poll for us?
Sure. Let's see. Give me just 1 second, please. If you want to continue, I'll have it up in just 90 seconds, hopefully.
Okay. So folks, the poll questions are about what plans we had for in-person. Well, let me just back up. There's a question in about, can anyone hear me? Everybody is joining muted. So everybody's joining the webinar muted. We're going to unmute people on a one-on-one basis, and panelists are generally self-muted until they're talking. So everybody is joining muted. And so when the poll comes up, the poll asks us what our in-person plans were and what our resources are, because we want to talk about what different kinds of resources we have as we pivot to the ground game. And resources include physical materials we've already produced, money, partners, and relationships. And as you know, a lot of us either work for or with nonprofits, and a lot of times it's relationships that actually get everything done when we don't have resources of our own. And I'm going to try and launch the poll one more time. Can everybody see it? At least one person sees it because we're starting to get answers.
I just don't, huh?
Okay. So Chris Valdez says the poll popped up as soon as he joined. Lila, Victoria, Luciano, not able to see it. Maria, not able to see it. So let me turn this around and ask the questions. Actually, we've got one more thing we're going to try and do first. Thanks for your patience. This is my first time launching a poll, and it looks easy. You populate the poll with your questions, and then you launch it. Erin, I'm going to end the poll and see if it allows you to relaunch it.
Okie dokie. You may have to pass host to me in order to do that too.
Okay, I'm going to pass host to you right now.
Okie dokie. All All right. Let's see if some responses start to come in now because I have it up in the way I think I do. Let's see. If y'all don't see it right now, then there just may be something a little outside of our control, and so let me know.
Erin, folks are asking if they should leave the webinar and rejoin in order to see the poll.
I don't think so. I wonder if we can just do without it because for whatever reason it's not showing up and it doesn't seem to be within our control right now.
Okay. So let me ask the questions from the poll live. And Erin, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take back host, or if you'll give me back host again. And I'm going to read the questions of the poll. And Erin, if you would just help calculate from the chat. So folks, if everybody would jump into chat for a second. And the first question is, which in-person events did you have planned? Block walking. So if you planned, but this is before COVID-19, this is before everybody got shut down. If you planned a block walk, will you jump into chat and say block walk? If you plan to rally, would you jump into chat and say rally? And a rally is anything that would have brought people together. If you planned to invite people to come to libraries and other freely accessible public gathering places, would you say libraries? If you were planning in-person partner events, would you put partners? And if you were doing mobile response centers, would you put in mobile? If there is anything else we haven't covered here, would you put it into chat? And Erin, would you start listing out for us what you're reading in the chat box?
Yes, definitely. So it does seem like a number of us were planning to do rallies, more than I might expect. And then after that, we're pretty much tied with canvassing.
Okay, that's great. That's great to know. And so folks, continue to jump into the chat and add what your in-person plans are. After this webinar, we'll crunch all this data and then share it back out with you, along with the recommendations that we've sourced during today's webinar. The second question is, what physical resources have you invested in already? So again, as we were planning before COVID-19 hit, did you beg, borrow, steal, purchase laptops or computer notebooks for mobile resource? If so, just put in laptops, computers, iPads, put in whatever. Did you produce flyers or brochures that you were going to give out? Did you produce palm cards or business cards or any little postcard you were going to give out? Stickers, buttons, what about multilingual materials? So in the chat box, will you tell us which physical resources you either produced or started producing before the stay-at-home and shelter-in-place happened?
So it looks like we have a lot of flyers going on. Not seeing a lot of technology necessarily, like laptops borrowed or that sort of resource, but definitely lots of flyers, yard signs, and then to revisit some of the other strategies, it looks like special partnerships is also a pattern among those who are kind of here with us today, kind of getting creative with educators and with different community spaces and partnering with those. Still lots of flyers, brochures, stickers, banners. Ooh, and DaVina had a lot of stuff going on. She also had yard signs and iPads and hotspots on top of that.
Oh, wow, that's great. Okay, we're going to come back to this in just a minute. And so I'm really excited that so many people are mentioning special partnerships, because the next question is, who do you have relationships with? And so a couple of things that we put in the poll were grocery stores, food banks, pharmacies, restaurants offering delivery or pickup, delivery services, government agencies. Will you type in who you have relationships? It doesn't have to be those, just start typing in your relationships, but then flag it. If you've got a relationship with any kind of a grocery store, doesn't have to be big, it could be a corner market. Any food banks or people who do food delivery that aren't specifically food banks, pharmacies, restaurants, delivery services, government agencies, and other folks. Erin, what do you see?
Lots of food bank partnerships, which is great. And we're hearing that across the country, really. Some different government agencies. Only one kind of healthcare center or clinic partnership, and then lots of county and local officials and kind of offices at the county level, school districts, even more food banks. We got lots of food banks going on, and then chambers of commerce.
Okay, that's wonderful. And then our last question in the poll is, which of these statements best defines your current reality? And so I'll read these and then I'll give a shorthand that we can use to put in our chat box. Which of these statements best define your current reality? We have materials, but no additional budget allocated. And so you could just say materials or stuff there. We are relying on volunteers. And so if you were intending on touching your volunteer core, put volunteers. Third one, we have relationships, but no physical assets and no budget for printed materials. So put relationships if you feel like you've got strong relationships with partners. And then the last one is, no, not the next to last one is, we have a budget that we can repurpose. And so if you've got a budget you can repurpose in some way, put down budget. And then the last one is, we're starting over from scratch because of COVID-19. And if that's your reality today, that you're looking at all these things you were supposed to do but can't, that you'd plan to do but can't, just put in some question marks in our chat box. Or COVID-19 with exclamation points. Erin, what are you seeing in our chat box?
A couple of folks prominently have said that they have some additional budget to spend. I would say after that, relationship. So it sounds like budget, relationships, and then a big wave of COVID-19 have to. I would probably break those into thirds. You know, a third relationships are our asset. A third have been impacted and have to go back to the drawing board by COVID-19, and a third have some budget to rework.
Okay, and Aaron wasn't supposed to be with us very long at the beginning of this, but I'm going to ask him to stay just a moment longer. Aaron, if you can. I want to go ahead and pull up the presentation and write in it. So this is not going to be in presentation mode. This is going to be in edit mode. So the screen says poll, and that's all the things that we were planning on doing to get people to come to us. Aaron, would you recap from the initial bit of chat box? What were the ways people were going to bring us together? Okay, so Aaron's putting this in right now with partnerships, rallies, canvassing.
Let's just do our top three here.
Okay, block walking. Okay, and so canvassing and block walking is interesting because it's also in the way that today we're defining push. It would be a push. Aaron, would you go to the next slide where it says push? And these were all the ways we were going to go out into other people's lives. And so what were ways including block walking, that we were going to take the message to people. And folks, what we're going to do is tie these plans we had to the digital version of them. And we're going to bring Frances on in just a minute. Frances is the executive director of Houston in Action. Earlier today, we heard from North Texas in what they're doing, and Central Texas, and now we're going to hear from the Houston area and Houston in Action. And we're going to bring her on in just a minute to talk about how they're pivoting. And right now, so on the push, we've got the libraries, the block walking and canvassing, and then the use of physical materials and collateral to hand out to people. Okay. So Frances, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment and come over, and I think you're muted. If you would unmute, and welcome.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So this is Frances Valdez from Houston in Action. Hope everyone is safe and healthy. And yeah, I mean, I can just briefly talk to you about our work and then explain how we have been shifting. The first thing I want to say is that I hope that folks are not feeling sad or as though our work is at risk, because I don't know that we really know that. One thing that we've been talking a lot about here is, you know, we're all in this together. Everyone is having a difficult moment, both personally, professionally. And so everything is up in the air in terms of our lives. And so I don't think that the census response is any different than anything else that we might be dealing with. And so I think looking at it from that perspective allows us to look at the opportunities as well in this moment. People are actually at home a lot more than they probably would have been. And we know the census has been delivered to people in the mail. And that might be an opportunity that we hadn't expected and might work out for a better count. Of course, I think we're worried about the people we've always been worried about at Houston in Action. I know most of us, if not all of us, we're always focusing on the undercounted communities, communities that have been historically marginalized in all of the work that many of us do. And so we always knew that there were going to be challenges. I think the digital divide is one of the biggest challenges in this moment for communities that don't historically have good internet and might interact online differently than others. But with Houston in Action, we are a coalition of many different partners from across the Houston-Harris County region, mostly nonprofits, but as well as research institutions, and have developed a really strong relationship with Harris County and the city of Houston to develop a complete count committee together for our region. And so we were able to leverage a lot of relationships from a lot of the groups that we work with who already had vast networks and are doing important work in the community. Our work has always been about relationships. We always knew that the messenger was what mattered most about the census. And so in this moment, that doesn't change a lot. You can reach out to people by calling them, texting them. A lot of the organizations that we work with, they have strong social media presence with the communities that they reach and that are their constituents. So I really feel like if we're grounded in organizations and individuals who have relationships in undercounted communities, we're still best positioned to do this work well. Of course, I think it does change the way that we, as I guess, practitioners who have been leading the coordination efforts work, but there are things like Zoom and Facebook and email and all the different tools that we've been using at our disposal to keep us connected. And then again, really leaning on organizations and their relationships. What we've done is again, because we're lucky to have a very vast network. We have organizations that are historically very well suited to run digital campaigns. And so what we've been doing is just really utilizing the expertise that we have in-house and allowing our partners to connect with each other and learn from each other in the best way possible. And so I think that's something that we should all think about. Is a lot of organizations, especially organizations that serve youth, have been doing their work primarily online and through digital means for a while now, and really have a lot to offer many of the rest of us. We're supporting organizations to create phone banking and walking them through what that process looks like, as well as what SMS text messaging can look like as well. And there are a lot of different tools and information out there to support people. We're happy to support as well and do what we can in-house, but also pull in organizations that are experts in this as well. Hopefully that's helpful. I'll stop for now and see if there's anything you'd like me to focus on more or have questions about.
Great, thank you so much, Frances. And again, Frances is with Houston in Action. And actually, let's switch over to DaVina Morris for just a moment. And DaVina, I am unmuting you. And so if you want to unmute yourself, I think where we want to start is with the idea of the hybrid partnerships, where we can leverage a partner who is an essential service right now, food, pharmacy, even liquor, and how we can leverage those partnerships to get our message out. And DaVina, I know that you guys, DaVina, well, I'll let you introduce yourself, but would you introduce yourself, DaVina, and then would you tell us a couple of the partnerships you're in the midst of right now in East Texas?
Sure. I'm DaVina Morris, and I work for Deep East Texas Council of Governments. We have partnerships already established, some with like our economic development corporations and our river authorities, because they are members of our COG. However, we've tried to take the opportunity to go into the community to some of these essential services, such as the faith-based organizations that are doing community drive-through dinners. They're giving out food for the children. The East Texas Food Bank has been giving out emergency boxes. So we're just asking them, hey, you know, if it's okay, we'll provide the flyers. Can we slip them in your boxes? Can we leave them here for you to give out? Can we have some stickers made with I count, and they have the census.gov website on there where people, you know, can be reminded, hey, don't forget to do your census. So we've just kind of tried to be creative about how we use these areas. We also have partnerships with the independent school districts in our 12 counties. And so they've allowed us to do some mail outs, and even there's some pickup points at the different schools for the children to pick up their packets. And so we're in the process of asking if we can leave some of our flyers there and allow those parents that pick up those packets to also pick up a flyer for the census.
Okay, and so let me ask some logistical questions that many of us may have. And folks, as you have questions, either for Frances in Houston or DaVina in East Texas, please jump into either chat or Q&A and add them. But a couple of questions would be around mobilizing volunteers or staff to help with it. And so when you talk about, say, putting in a flyer or a sticker or something with a food bank or with the local school districts, physically, and you know, I'm thinking about all of the quarantine advice and, you know, 6 feet or farther away kind of thing. Logistically, how are you sharing those physical resources? Are you doing it with staff, with volunteers? And what best practices do you have around like physically interacting to get materials to people?
Sure. So we do have staff. We have 12 county coordinators, one for each of our 12 counties. And those staff members they're actually contracted through DETCOG, and they've been going, they actually have access to come into our office to make copies. I mean, there's thousands of copies being made for the schools. The schools actually have, normally it's the principal that is stationed at the school, and they have sort of portable cubbies for each teacher where they pick up those packets. And so if we can limit the amount of interactions and that particular staff person drops those off and allows the volunteer there to get those flyers out, then that's our best avenue. With the churches having the drive-through dinners, basically I dropped off the stickers. It's actually my church. I dropped off the stickers, and the volunteers that were preparing the plates and doing the actual drive-through, they agreed to put those stickers on the to-go plates. And so utilizing the volunteers that are already in place and not necessarily putting our staff in any danger or ourselves, but if those people are already there, such as the food bank giving out boxes, you know, while they're filling those boxes, hey, can you throw in a flyer? That way you don't have that interaction and possibly kind of limit the interaction of person-to-person contact.
Okay, that's great, DaVina. And so let's pause for a second and go to Frances. Frances, would you reflect on what DaVina has just described about the physical logistics of getting materials to the essential service providers right now?
Sure. So, I mean, I think that in terms of best practices, of course, I think we're all learning that as we go. And as we learn more about the virus, we'll, I'm sure, adjust. But what we've done in terms of best practice is it's really up to the partner and the agency and the individual. So if people feel comfortable, if an organization feels comfortable in engaging with people, then we leave that decision up to them. So for us, a lot of the groups that are still doing in-person events are similar. It's the first responders, the clinics, the food banks. And so what we've done, I think it would just kind of happen this way for us. We were in the middle of reordering some more collateral. And so we're just sending it straight to them at this point. The people who are using materials are really only the first responders, physical materials. And so we just try to get it shipped to them directly because they then have a process by which they are managing their work internally. And same thing, the food banks are, you know, also limiting their interaction with people. So putting it into the bags that they give of food is kind of the best we can do at this point.
Okay, and Frances and DaVina, if you're in a place where you can look at your screen, are you seeing my shared screen that says logistics, where we're starting to type in these things?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. And so will you, let's capture a couple of these things. So using staff in place, shipping materials directly to the essential services and first responders. What are popular items? Like, what are people most interested in having? Is it stickers? Is it flyers? And we're going to open this up for everybody to respond to it in just a minute. But what are you guys, just the two of you, what are you seeing?
I've come into that most of the people would rather have either the half page or postcards. They don't want the full page flyer. So we've tried to develop some half page and postcard size flyers with the information, basic information. I know one that's really popular is the 3 ways that they can do it. You know, if they got it in the mail, the telephone number, and the website. And then the other one is the letter that we send to the schools, both in English and Spanish. Those are our two popular materials.
Okay. And that was DaVina, right?
Yes.
And Frances, what would you add in terms of popular items?
What hasn't already been said, I mean, the only thing that I think is really helpful right now could be the signs. We have like we have signs that say yes to census, like yard signs could be used in this moment. And we've gotten some requests to, same thing, we have some partners that are trying to partner with grocery stores and other essential services. And so that way it's something that someone doesn't have to take from someone else. I think that what people don't want to do is take a flyer from someone at their door or even in public. And so having something that people don't have to touch, I think, is helpful. Again, if it's already in the bag, I think that's a different kind of scenario. But yeah, any type of signage or information like a yard sign, I think, is what I would add to that.
Okay. And then let's talk through partners for just a second. So I heard school districts. Who else are we partnering with?
Churches or faith-based organizations.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for us, our partnership was pretty extensive with just the nonprofit community, which could entail community centers, arts organizations, legal organizations supporting people with legal services. The government partners, the city and the county. I think one thing we're trying to figure out right now is how we support any COVID education that the city and the county need to want to get out. And definitely, again, our approach also needs to be in line with what our county judge and mayor say in terms of social distancing. So that's another just thing to think about, that we're actually doing the work in the way that our local officials have said that we need to comport ourselves in this moment. And then I think it's also, those community groups, like grassroots community groups. What you're seeing a lot of right now is our conversations around like mutual aid and community care. So people organizing themselves by neighborhoods or by interest. There are a lot of people wanting to, reach out to each other and support each other. So really just finding, I think, again, it's the trusted messenger, wherever that is, and having an open mind to what that could look like, I think is always important.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to stop the screen share for just a minute and come over to some questions. Civic clubs, HOAs, community groups. And so Francisco, I'm going to unmute you for just a moment. Would you tell us a little bit about outreach to HOAs and civic clubs?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Oh, and Francisco, would you introduce yourself first?
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yes, you sound good.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Francisco Castillo. I'm with Harris County, particularly Harris County Commissioner Precinct 2, Adrian Garcia. And so in addition to all of these efforts, in addition to contributing and working with Houston in Action, within our geographic boundaries. One of the things that we're doing in our own department is reaching out to civic clubs, HOAs, community groups that we already have relationships with, whose meetings we already attend, and kind of use them to, or encourage them, empower them to get out the word, get out the count within their own neighborhood, within their own HOA, kind of on an organizational level. And we've seen it's been pretty effective so far. But yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Francisco? So he's with a county commissioner's office. And so while that county commissioner is in Harris County, there would be some similarities with anybody all over the state in a county office. Does anyone have any questions about opportunities to work with either county commissioners or city councilors? Please hop into the chat and add that if you've got a question for Francisco. And Francisco, I'm gonna temporarily, let's mute you again. And I'd like to go to a couple of people. Yvette Stewart. Yvette Stewart, is it okay if I take you, if I unmute you? Yvette, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
I'm sorry. I'm working while you're talking.
Okay, and everybody who's not talking right now, please mute. Yvette, what are your questions and what are your? Would you introduce us and us to you and who you are? And then the two questions are, what are your questions of our group, and then what are your recommendations? But first, tell us who you are.
Okay, I'm Yvette Stewart. I'm a partnership specialist out of the Denver region, the Dallas team. And I'm actually in Killeen, Texas. And I don't have any questions. I was listening to everyone, I guess because of the pandemic and us being stuck at home. We're just waiting to see what's going to happen when we are released. What's the first thing that's going to happen? What's going to happen after that? That's pretty much it on my side.
Okay, great. And so Yvette's with the Census Bureau, and when you talk about being unleashed, you're talking about when can you go back out into the community and do things?
Correct.
Correct, okay. So if folks, we're gonna ask Yvette to mute again, but if you have any questions for her, jump in, type those in to the chat, and then we're gonna go on to Victoria. Victoria, is your last name Gutierrez? Victoria, we're gonna call on you for just a minute. And we have unmuted you, so if you want to unmute your side, would you introduce yourself and either ask a question or give us some advice or something to an example?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Victoria Gutierrez. I'm located in Laredo, Texas. I am the Census Project Coordinator for a nonprofit organization called Mid-Rio Grande Area Health Education Center. So we got a grant from Methodist Healthcare Ministries for all of South Texas AHEC, and we serve 35 regions. So initially we had a bunch of events planned. We were gonna have a park event. We were gonna go and do outreach in all of those regions. But since everything that happened, we've shifted more towards our social media. So we did hire like a media group, and they did create some pages for us. So we've been active on those, but I had previously spoken to Aaron and telling him more of like kind of the audience, like how to get more like followers and get that message more widespread. I guess that would just be my only question.
Okay, great. And so we're going to be talking about that. And if you don't mind muting your side again, as Victoria mentioned, she had talked with Erin previously, our partner Erin, and about kind of how to do things. And we're going to switch into that mode in just a second. Actually want to ask two more people if we can activate them. And the first is Rafael Torres. Rafael, are you someplace where you can talk? Is it okay if I unmute you? And so Rafael, if you can talk, you are unmuted. Okay, Rafael may not be able to talk right now. Let's go to Isabel Trevino. Isabel, can you talk if I unmute you? Okay, Isabel, if you're able to talk, you're unmuted. And you just need to unmute yourself. Okay, we can't hear you, Isabel, but we'll come back. I know you had your hand up to talk. So I'm going to share my screen again, and on the screen, okay, so on the screen, you'll see again our slide deck, but we're not in presentation mode right now. We're in building mode because we're crowdsourcing from y'all. And we're looking for online and hybrid ways to connect. And one of the most exciting in-person digital online block walking options is Nextdoor. And Erin hosted a webinar yesterday that got really detailed about Nextdoor and gave lots of tips and tricks about how to get started if you're new to it, and what if, you know, Nextdoor isn't even in your neighborhood yet and nobody else is on. But Nextdoor is one of the online communities that gets really granular at a neighborhood level, and it is authentic and personal in that you are there as a human being with your name and the street you live on. Now, people don't see your address, but for me being on Nextdoor, people see Robin Paoli. They see that I live on Tarley Street, and I've got a reach to be able to talk to neighbors who are in a certain area around me. And I want to show you a couple of things about that. So I'm going to bring over, and so I want you to think about this as a way to take block walking and make it digital. And so let's say that folks wanted to block walk my neighborhood. This is my census tract 2107 in Harris County, Texas. It is north of downtown. It is still inside Loop 610, and it is in a gentrifying neighborhood. Right now, we are the brown color that shows that we've got a fairly low response rate. And when you come over so in the middle, you can see the census tract. And when you come over to the left, you can see what our local response rate is. So in 2010, the final self-response rate for my census tract was 67%, about 2/3 of people. Currently, we're at only 22.4% of self-response. And you can see some neighborhoods in my area are also, some of these census tracts are also the darker sort of sienna colored brown. And then you can see some lighter ones, and lighter in this case, as you go towards sort of the paler colors and then into the blues, is a better self-response. And so that's what our census tract looks like as of yesterday. Now I want to show you a poll I put up on Nextdoor. And so I'm going to bring this onto the screen for you to see. So I went on Nextdoor in my neighborhood and just asked people with this poll, have you received your 2020 census invitation? And in it I say, we've received ours. Here's the link to respond. And so if there's somebody who's been thinking about the census, man, they can just click that and go. They're right there. And then here's a link for more info. And I went ahead and put texascounts.org in there to give a shout out to the campaign, and also because we've got great resources and data for people who have questions about the census. And so, you know, that was the poll. The results are a little bit higher than they were when I took this screenshot. And I'm going to do that next. Let me pull up a screenshot of the actual results. And what I'm about to show you are the results from Monday. And so as of Monday, I had asked the poll, I'd done the poll over the weekend. As of Monday, 23 people in my neighborhood voted. And look at the responses. So yes, I've gotten my invitation as I've responded, 70%. Yes, but I haven't responded yet, 26%. And 4 people just said, nope, they haven't gotten their invitation yet, or they're not aware of it. This response, 70, 26, 4, with slightly more than 2/3 of the people having already self-responded, is exactly opposite of what the neighborhood's response rate is. And what's really interesting about that is that the people who join Nextdoor are already a step towards being civically involved. And so they may be, as Erin describes it, they may be the neighborhood curmudgeons who want to say, why is there a dog barking? Or, you know, what's going on? What was that noise? Or, you know, something like that. It's a step towards civic involvement, just being on Nextdoor. And so you can see that the people who were interested enough to respond to this poll are mostly people in my neighborhood who have already responded. So what's interesting about this from a canvassing point of view is that while there are people who need to hear the message of the census who will never hear about it on Nextdoor, what you have in Nextdoor are these civically active people who may talk to their neighbors and who may encourage each other to either do a census challenge or to just go ahead and respond. And when I checked on the poll this morning, a few more people had responded, but the basic ratio was the same, that overwhelmingly people responding to the poll on Nextdoor have already responded to their census. But Nextdoor is a great way to get to know your neighbors. And I'm going to show a couple of screens from yesterday's presentation, just because if you're not using Nextdoor yet, this is a really great way. And so, pardon me, I'm just going to read this, the slide out loud to us. Nextdoor is very powerful because it's so personal and people get passionate about their neighborhoods. And so when you think about everybody who was going to go canvassing or go block walking, Nextdoor is an incredible way to reach out at that household level and go door to door, digitally speaking, one street at a time, one neighborhood at a time. Nextdoor needs local. And so one of the things that we saw yesterday was that the U.S. Census Bureau, as an agency, has joined Nextdoor, but it's not very active at the local level. And so we need local census champions on Nextdoor spreading the word. And so what Erin did yesterday was actually reach out to people on Nextdoor and message them and say, hey, I'm your neighbor Erin. I'm excited about the census. It's really important for funding, X, Y, and Z. Have you responded yet, or do you want to respond? And in addition to connecting with neighbors for that, you can also connect with businesses. There are ways to get your neighborhood on Nextdoor if you're not already there, if you're in a rural neighborhood or just a sort of a low population density neighborhood that's not on Nextdoor yet. And we can help with invitations to join. And we'll make sure everybody has a link to this presentation. But what we had in yesterday's webinar were actual sample messages. So here's something that you could customize and send to a neighbor. Here's something for a business. Here's something for groups. And want to go back up here to the different ways we're connecting and stop sharing my screen and come back over to folks and ask a couple of folks to respond about which of these social channels that I'm about to name are you already involved with. And so DaVina, would you unmute yourself? And what social channels are you and the Deep East Texas Council of Government already using?
So we're using Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we've also set aside a portion of our budget to have some advertising on over-the-top television, which is your streaming networks, Hulu, Netflix, Roku, Apple TV, and we've targeted our specific 12 counties.
Okay. And so by buying time on streaming video services that reach your 12 counties, do you produce a video, or is it a like a PSA that runs, or how does that work? Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so we actually contracted a media consulting firm, and so they have put together several videos, one English, one Spanish. There's a couple of variations depending on the target audience that they're trying to reach. I know that some are targeted toward the Latino community, the African American community, the elderly. And so a few of those ads, there's about 4 of them. The PSAs are the same way. We have a few blurbs that we use depending on, which audience we're trying to target in that particular ad. And they're really short PSAs. The blurbs are really short because we don't have that much time. They basically say the same thing. Some of them focus more on doing it for, our rural communities because we need road improvements, programs for housing, just different things like that. Others may focus on nutrition programs for our schools. So they just kind of vary depending on that particular ad of our 12 counties.
Okay, great. That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. And we're probably going to come back and ask you again a little bit about the streaming video because there was another initiative we wanted to talk about in that. But folks, would you jump, everybody in the webinar, would you jump onto chat and start telling us what social media channels you're using right now? If you don't mind, will you just go to chat and start adding social media? Okay, so we're seeing Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, LinkedIn. This is great, folks. So I'm going to ask a couple of people to speak. Lila, I am going to promote you to panelist, Lila, and ask you to introduce yourself to everybody. It's going to take you a minute. You're going to rejoin the webinar as a panelist. But if you would rejoin as a panelist, and then we want to ask you, Lila, about LinkedIn. And so Lila is actually with the Office of the Texas Demographer. And so she's got a tremendous amount of state data, and she's one of the leaders at the state level who's helping get things out. Lila, as soon as you're ready, will you tell me you're here and ready to talk?
I'm ready.
Okay, great, Lila. First, would you introduce yourself briefly to everybody, and then let's talk about LinkedIn.
Sure. So my name is Lila, and I work with the Texas Demographic Center. The Texas Demographic Center is part of the Census Bureau State Data Center Network. So we are like the liaisons between the Census Bureau and all of the states and the local communities within our states. We produce population estimates and projections for the state of Texas and its counties. And I'm a senior demographer with the Texas Demographic Center.
Okay, great. Well, tell us a little bit about how you've used LinkedIn.
Sure. So I actually never used to use LinkedIn, but I go around the state and I give a lot of presentations, and I noticed that a lot of times after the presentations, people would try to connect with me via LinkedIn specifically, right? They wouldn't look for me, on Facebook or anything like that. They would look for me on LinkedIn. And so I started building a little bit of a network there, and you see a lot more professionals that are looking to connect, relating to commonalities across industries, across interests, like whether it's data analysis. And there's a lot of organizations and business groups that are on LinkedIn. And I found it really helpful to try to push out Census Bureau information through LinkedIn, especially when we were trying to find partners to help us get out the 2020 census messaging.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. I want to ask Victoria Gutierrez. I know that we had taken you live earlier, Victoria. I want to make sure. Can you unmute, Victoria? And you had listed Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Could you tell us a little bit about what you've seen with LinkedIn?
So as far as LinkedIn, I am also not, don't really use it as often, but we did create a page for the census specifically. So basically all the content that we've been sharing on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram has been uploaded to our LinkedIn as well. And based on connections we've had, people have been able to see the information and kind of see what we're doing and how we're getting involved in the community.
That's great. And so in your chat contribution, you had, Victoria, you'd listed Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Which one do you see the most engagement on around census materials?
I would have to say Facebook. Facebook has been the one that has reached more people, and more people have liked it and reshared it. And that's the one I feel that we've gotten the most traction on so far.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. If you would mute again, and then I'd like to, Luciana Barr. Luciana, I would like to unmute you. Hold on just a second. So Luciana, would you unmute yourself and introduce yourself to us? Luciano, can you, you may not be able to talk where you are right now. If you can, please unmute yourself and join us. We had a couple of questions for you. In the meantime, Martha Vargas. Martha said in our chat that she's using TikTok. And so Martha, I would like to find you and turn on your, okay. Martha, you're allowed to talk right now. Could you unmute yourself and tell us about your use of TikTok? Okay, Martha may not be able to talk right now. Let's go to, just looking for other folks who've mentioned things. So somebody has called in on a Galaxy A10. It doesn't show your name, but I'm going to give you the microphone. If you are calling in on a Galaxy A10, and if you wrote Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram, can you unmute yourself and talk? Okay, I know some folks are having trouble getting their microphones on. Let's go back to DaVina for a minute. DaVina, do you have your microphone on?
Yes.
Is there, and no worries, don't worry about mentioning any names,
Okay.
but were there people that you reached out to for hybrid sharing? And those hybrid partnerships, again, are like with a grocery store or school district where you're giving them materials. Were there people you reached out to who said no, who didn't know how to help in that way?
Yes. There were a few, and different counties. Like I said, we're in Deep East Texas, so it's very rural. And we do have, you know, some people that aren't as informed about the census, and to be quite frank and honest, aren't necessarily a fan. So we have had several instances where we have gotten a no here and there, but the majority of the people are very adamant about helping us and anything that they can do to assist us in getting the word out. So for the most part, we've had really good participation from partners and different agencies and areas in the community, along with our elected officials as well.
Oh, that's
Can you hear me?
great.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And for the people who agreed to distribute materials with you, did they immediately understand the connection between who they are and what they do and the census, or did you need to connect the dots? And what I mean by that is we know that the census determines a lot of funding and representation. And so did people, did like a school district say, yes, we need an accurate count because we need to know where to build schools, or did you need to connect those dots?
I think for the most part, most of them knew. Again, with us being a COG, we have access to the majority of our superintendents and elected officials. Several of them sit on our board of directors. So that information has been presented to them in board meetings. We've also held regional census trainings that is open to the public, the general public. And Katie has graced us with her presence at 2 of those. And so we invite them to come in so that they can sort of connect the dots and get a chance to see how the census actually affects them. We've also invited the faith-based organization leaders, small business owners, and other people in our community to try to help them to see the different programs and areas that are affected by the data that comes from the census.
Okay. And so I'm in just a second going to share my screen again, and it's something that you've probably seen from Katie when she's come out to do a training. I'm going to put it on my screen and then share my screen. Okay, so DaVina, can you see this graphic on your screen? Is it
Yes.
sharing? Okay, great. So folks, the Center for Public Policy Priorities, one of our partners in Texas Counts, they ran some data about the different things that get funded. And you may already have seen this slide. It'll certainly be a part of the materials that we distribute after this to everybody. But as you think about partners, as you think about people that you want to do some hybrid or shared outreach with, at the most basic level, you know, getting an I count sticker with 2020census.gov and putting that sticker on food that's being delivered, or a flyer that goes in a grocery bag or something like that. These are the, you know, this is what federal aid to Texas looked like in 2018. So whether it was schools or healthcare or housing, there's a lot that's covered here, and a lot of this that spills over into other areas of life. And so we know that as we think about the safety net and we think about the interconnectedness of everything, we know that when people have housing and health coverage, then that makes it easier for them to hold down a job or care for their children or pursue education. And so there are different ways to take this data and connect it to the people we want to do outreach with. What's particularly interesting about where federal aid went to in Texas in 2018 is that a lot of these sectors are represented in the essential services today. So when you look at this and you think, oh, and just speaking about Harris County, the Harris County Hospital District and Harris Health, that's considered essential. And so there are organizations, you know, not just Ben Taub, but like the local community nonprofit health insurer, Community Health Choice. That's an essential service right now. And the clinics and the pharmacies and the different federally qualified healthcare centers, and then all the places that are distributing meals and food, and then the school districts that have packets for children. All of these are great partners. And I don't know if anybody here has tried to partner with a liquor store. I know that they are doing a booming business right now, and that they do a lot of curbside pickup. And so, partnering with them and getting materials into their bags or boxes or whatever they're doing, that may be another way. Haven't heard anybody. I'm kind of waiting to learn from the first person where that may go. And so want to go to Frances. Frances, are you still available to talk? I think you are unmuted.
I'm so sorry. I had to step away for a moment. Did you need me to answer something?
No worries. Thanks for being with us during this entire webinar. So Frances, as you reflect on what you're hearing and seeing in today's webinar, both about the ways that people are reaching out and the questions folks have about, the best ways to reach people, what takeaways do you have? Like, what are you hearing people say, and what are you learning from the other folks in our webinar?
I mean, I think the big takeaway is, again, I think there's some really great, I think, specific tools that people have uplifted. Thank you for the next door information. I think that there are things that can help, like next door, if you don't have access to, public phone number lists or address lists and things like that, that are really helpful. But I also just, like I said at the beginning, I think that it also is just an opportunity for us to remember that the people that have put in all of the work thus far, if you are working with trusted messengers, then it's also, they know the best platforms. Like I saw some folks talking about WhatsApp. I know that that's a specific platform, especially in the immigrant community, that's really popular. And so each constituency and community will have a different way to reach out to them. And so I think really relying on the people that have those relationships and have for a long time is going to lead us to the people. And I think also what I'm hearing from our folks is that it's similar to what it would have been in person. I think it's the human to human contact. And if it can't be in person right now, picking up the phone and calling someone, texting someone, but the direct contact of asking people how they're doing as well, is people do want connection in this moment. And I think that that's just important for us to remember. Also keeping it fun. If you go to censusweek.com, you'll see a bunch of different activities that people are looking at. And I think we're all, again, in experiment mode. And what I've also seen is people just having a good time on Facebook, dancing, singing, playing instruments, and that we can make the census work fun as well. It doesn't always have to be educational in the sense of like thrive, but it can be educational in the sense of having a good time, maybe getting people moving and talking to each other. So yeah, thank you so much for this. I think it was really great to hear from everyone, and just also to know that we're all in solidarity together. I think we're figuring this out. And I would also ask, I think that us continuing to communicate, I know that a lot of webinars are happening and trainings, and I think as much as we can plan together and have folks like from different places coming together, then we are leveraging our resources and our knowledge in the best way possible.
Thank you so much, Frances. I really appreciate that, and am grateful to everybody who's been a part of this community conversation today. As we have been trying to mix up the content today on Census Day, where at 10 a.m. we had the coffee and conversation that was a friendly, moderated chat among several people who are on the front lines, including a couple of the folks who are in our current webinar. And that at noon, we had the social media power hour. And again, it was very much a practical working session of let's get in the virtual room together, try a couple of things and report back what we're learning and seeing. And then this one, a conversation to kind of crowdsource what people are learning, what we had intended to do, what our resources are going forward. And we're very mindful of the fact that the majority of the responses to the very last question on the poll about kind of where are you in your understanding of how you're going to do your census outreach was some version of, wow, we've gone back to page one, or we're really trying to get it figured out as we pivot from our in-person to our digital outreach. And so we're going to focus more of our resources on equipping folks, telling the stories, and helping make the connections, including doing some training that gets really, really granular about how to do some of the different things. And we're still sharing the screen, and I would connect the dots to a couple of things. First, in what people use pull and push in marketing campaigning in different ways. Today, we're talking about it just in the pull is bringing people to us, the push is going out to them. And the pull here, we talked about having planned, events at parks, rallies, partnerships with other groups, canvassing and block walking, which is also a push. Coming over here, we were going to invite people to libraries and other areas, planning on doing block walking and canvassing, and using a lot of physical materials and other collateral. And that there are these online and hybrid ways to respond. And we'll make all this material available afterwards, but here's a partial list of some of the ways people can respond online, either with social media or an online community. And then we've asked people to think about, who are our partners? And Frances from Houston in Action reminded us when we are in partnerships with folks to trust our partners, to know their audiences and their people and what those communication tools look like. In addition to giving our recommendations, to lean in and ask them what works with them, and to be able to give them the tools and materials that help them. But to think about the school districts, the faith-based organizations, the larger nonprofit community, everything food and medicine related, healthcare, and of course, you can go to censusweek.com for fun ideas. You can also go to texascounts.org. And then some of the logistics, and let's come back to this for just a second. With the logistics, what DaVina and others were talking about here was use staff who are already in place. While our volunteers still want to be mobilized in different ways, right now, the safest way that complies with city, county government instructions on quarantine is use staff who are already in place. When possible, ship materials directly to the essential services and the first providers. You know, so don't, if you're going to get stickers, don't have them shipped to your office or your home and then take them someplace. Have them shipped to HEB or a faith-based partner or something like that, and let them do the fulfillment part. And then popular items so far. Sorry, got really excited there. Popular items, half-page or postcard-sized materials. So they're looking for smaller things to be able to insert. The 3 ways to respond, boy, that's just quick and to the point. You can do it online, by phone, or you can mail it in. The letter to the schools, it was in English and Spanish. And I would say to just expand on that whenever there's the opportunity for multicultural outreach and working with partners and getting out things in non-English languages, that's great. And then these yard signs. People are out walking their dogs. They're out taking walks and bicycle rides and even drives in their car just to get out of the house, but to still stay quarantined. And so a yard sign that says yes to the census is great. And the reminder that the last thing people want is to take a piece of paper or other material from another human being right now. We're all trying to keep each other safe. And so we want to limit anything that goes from human to human. What we want are clean, new, untouched materials that get put into a bag or attached to a box or something like that. We're really at the end of our webinar time. I'm going to stop screen sharing. I am going to come over to the chat, and I want to thank everybody in the chats. Folks are asking for contact info so that we can stay connected, and people are putting information into the chat window so that we can stay connected. We'll share this out and make sure that everybody who wants to share their information has had a chance to do that. Thank you all so much to our panelists and to everybody who contributed and shared free of your expertise. Thank you so much. It's a learning community like this that's going to get a better, a more complete, a more accurate count in Texas. And we're grateful to each and every one of you. Hope you have a great, great rest of the day. And remember, at 4:30 on Instagram, we're having a party. And so whatever your beverage of choice would be at 4:30, be sure to follow us on Instagram. It's just Texas Counts, at Texas Counts on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram. And if you want to check in as a reminder for the full day, go to txcounts.me/Census Day. Take care, everybody, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.